Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military with Summary channel, and in this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 24 hours. We have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about the Russian Federation, because the most important updates are coming exactly from this area. Today the Supreme Commander-in-Chief Vladimir Putin visited one of the command posts of the joint group of forces and held a meeting with the Chief of the General Staff Valery Gerasimov and the commanders of the groups involved in the special military operation. The president was briefed in detail on the situation along the line of combat contact, particularly in the Kupyansk and Krasnoarmeysk directions. So the city of Krasnoarmeysk is the former title of the city of Pokrovsk. It was noted that in the Kupyansk direction up to 5,000 Ukrainian armed forces servicemen were encircled, while in the Pokrovsk direction 5,500 Ukrainian armed forces servicemen were surrounded. The Supreme Commander-in-Chief was provided with complete information about the situation at the front. So once again today the Russians, the President of the Russian Federation and the Chief of the General Staff Valery Gerasimov officially stated that the city of Kupyansk and the entire Kupyansk agglomeration was encircled by the armed forces of the Russian Federation without any chances for Ukrainians to escape this cauldron. So of course if we take a look at this map, at this configuration of the line of combat contact, it is very difficult to imagine how the Russians managed to encircle Ukrainians if the distance, let's say, between the Russian positions in the northern part of the city of Kupyansk and around the settlement of Kolesnivkivka is around 14 kilometers. So obviously these 14 kilometers is enough for Ukrainians to escape this encirclement, but everything is not so simple. For example, let's rewind the number of updates for the 25th of October of 2025, and we got 4 geolocations from this part, from the area of the city of Kupyansk-Uzlovoy, and these 4 icons will give us the exact understanding of the situation on the ground. So this is the first video that took place in the vicinity of the settlement by the name of Osinova. The Ukrainians were trying to bring additional reinforcements or some food, and this vehicle was immediately destroyed by Russian FPV drone. And the most important part of this video is that first Russians destroyed this vehicle, and then the second drone appeared in this area immediately. So the Russians have hundreds of drones hidden in this area, and they can switch from one drone to another without any problems from Ukrainian, let's say, different equipment. So another video took place in the same area. Another Ukrainian truck was moving most likely in the direction of the city of Kupyansk-Uzlovoy with some provision, with food, maybe with munition, but the Russians discovered this vehicle and then they destroyed this vehicle immediately. And the second and the most important part is that right after the Russians destroyed that truck, the second drone appeared in this area immediately. So Russians have 24 hours, 7 days, let's say a week control over this territory with hundreds of drones that can be replaced, let's say, within seconds or something like this. Another video took place along the river Voskol. So here we can see how Ukrainians were trying to escape this encirclement, but Russians destroyed the Ukrainian vehicle immediately with FPV drone without any chances for Ukrainians for successful evacuation. And the fourth and the final video of the 25th of October took place on the territory of the city of Kupyansk-Uzlovoy. The Ukrainians were trying also to escape the cauldron, but they were destroyed immediately with Russian FPV drone. So we're just trying to tell that Russians control this territory with FPV drones, and this is most likely the only place where Ukrainians can escape the eastern bank of the river Voskol towards the mainland, but we see that Ukrainians have no chances. Ukrainians can escape this cauldron just without vehicles, without assets, without tanks, without infantry fighting vehicles, just on their own, without any help, with small groups of 1-2 soldiers crossing river Voskol and running away as fast and as soon as possible. So this is the only option for Ukrainians, but most likely this is also not an option, because the Russians once again control the situation. Furthermore, the Russians are not waiting when Ukrainians will escape this encirclement. Today, for example, we got probably one of the most important videos from this territory, from the village by the name of Kurilovka. So this is the video I'm talking about, and here we can see 2 Russian soldiers that raised the Russian flag above the building on the territory of the settlement by the name of Kurilovka. This building was geolocated, this is not very difficult, and this is exactly the building where Russians raised their flag flag. So this is it. And obviously we see that this is something like a breakthrough. So this is the situation by the end of the 25th of October, and this is the situation by the beginning of the 26th of October. So Russians managed to establish complete control over logistic, over evacuation roads, and now the Russians, as we can see, are trying to advance from the east in the western direction towards the settlement of Kupyansk, and Russians are tasked just for one purpose. They need to cut this big Kupyansk pocket at least in two small pockets. The first one around the settlements of Kovsharovka and Novoasinova, this is the first, the southern pocket, and the northern pocket around the settlements of Petropavlovka, Kucherevka, and the eastern part of the city of Kupyansk. First, Russians will cut these territories into smaller pockets, smaller pieces, and then they will handle with every single piece separately. Furthermore, the president of Russia stated that most likely Ukrainians would counterattack with the purpose on black Ukrainians in cauldrons. And for example, yesterday and during the previous days, we got videos how Ukrainians were trying to counterattack Russians in the northwestern part of the city of Kupyansk, but those attacks were repelled and Ukrainians suffered huge losses. We got this video probably on the 24th of October. Yes, this is the video. This is another episode how Ukrainians were trying to unblock Ukrainians on the eastern bank of the river Voskol, but Russians discovered those infantry fighting carriers and the Russians basically destroyed them with FPV drones. So all attempts to unblock those 5,000 soldiers failed and Russians managed to save their positions, and this is already the biggest disaster ever. If the information about the Kupyansk cauldron is correct and is true, then we can say that after Russians finish with this cauldron, they will be able to get the operational space of the Kharkiv region and they will be able to continue advancing further, and Ukrainians will have huge problems with forces and with manpower. So another paragraph of the meeting was that Russians also managed to encircle Ukrainians up to 5,500 soldiers on the territory of the city of Pokrovsk. As for the city of Pokrovsk, telling the truth, I have no doubts that this is exactly the situation, because we see that the Pokrovsk pocket is much smaller than the Kupyansk pocket, probably 4 or 5 times smaller. This just the Pokrovsk pocket is just the city limits of the entire Pokrovsk agglomeration, nothing more. We have added additional area, this one, the black one, between the city of Rodinska and the western part of the city of Pokrovsk, which means that this is already a kill zone without any chances for Ukrainians to evacuate themselves or to escape this cauldron using roads through this territory. So once again, the Russians stated that up to 5,500 soldiers were encircled in this area without any chances. If you remember, several days ago, we discussed that Russians issued an ultimatum to Ukrainians to withdraw their positions by Monday of 27th of October of 2025, but most likely, and according to information we have, the Ukrainians didn't use this opportunity, which means that there's just one option, two options left for them: to surrender or to stay on the territory of the Pokrovsk agglomeration forever. So this is the situation, and this is exactly what is happening right now. But the sources are saying that the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine, Encircled, ordered to withdraw troops at least from the Kupyansk direction. We haven't received anything about the Pokrovsk because most likely he understands that there are no chances for Ukrainians to escape Pokrovsk-Mirnograd agglomeration, but there are chances to save soldiers from the Kupyansk direction. At the same time, during the previous 24 hours, we received videos and geolocations that confirm Ukrainian counterattacks in this area. The Ukrainians counterattacked in the area of Novoshakhova and the Ukrainians counterattacked in the area of Sukhetskaya. So we have two videos that confirm the situation. In the first video that was published by the 82nd Brigade of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, we can see Ukrainians that raised the Ukrainian flag in the most southern part of the settlement of Sukhetskaya. So this is the point. So based on this video, we adjusted at least 50% of the settlement. Furthermore, we have the video published from the settlement of Volna. Here we can see how Russians and Ukrainians were fighting on the territory of the settlement. So these are Ukrainians and these are Russians that are trying to escape escape and to run away from this territory. So based on this video, we have also adjusted the map. So this is exactly what the president of the Russian Federation was talking about. He reported and he has said that Ukrainians will counterattack with the purpose to unblock encircled Ukrainians. So that is why the Russians and the chief of the general staff of the armed forces of the Russian Federation must pay additional attention to this area and not to allow Ukrainians with all means, not to allow them to unblock Ukrainians encircled on the territory of the Pokrovsk agglomeration. So one thing is clear, that in the next days we're going to see the bloodiest clashes ever since the beginning of the special military operation. The Ukrainians will throw everything they have with the purpose to cut this Shahova pocket and to restore control with the city of Pokrovsk. And Russians, of course, will do their best with the purpose not to allow the Ukrainians to do this. The only important thing that I would like to point to your attention, that the Russians will be in defense. The Russians are not who are attacking right now. They will be in defense, and of course it will be much more easier for them to hold their positions. At the same time, today, several pro-Russian resources and pro-Ukrainian resources reported that Russians managed to restore control or to capture the northwestern part of the settlement of Shahova. So, based on this video and based on the report published by Ukrainian and Russian sources, we adjusted the map. So, we see, despite the fact that Ukrainians are trying to counterattack on the western flank, the Russians are about to capture the settlement of Shahova. And if Russians can capture the settlement of Shahova faster than Ukrainians can counterattack and regain some positions to the west, this is going to be obviously another probably victory, significant victory of the Russians, because with the settlement of Shahova, the Russians don't need anymore all these settlements along the railways. Of course, they will fight for these territories, but the Ukrainians will not be able to ruin logistics and to ruin the monolith of Russian defense. So, as we can see, the situation for Ukrainians is very difficult. We are entering decisive, probably part of the autumn military campaign. Another important statement made by Putin and the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of the Russian Federation is that Russians finished the test of the Burevestnik missile. Russia successfully tested the Burevestnik with a nuclear power unit. This is a unique product which no one in the world has. The decisive tests have now been completed, stated the president of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, during a visit to one of the control points of the United Troop Grouping. The tests of Burevestnik took place on October 21st. The rocket covered 4,000 kilometers, and this is not the limit. The technical characteristics of Burevestnik allow it to be applied with guaranteed accuracy against highly protected objects at any distance, reported to the president by the head of the General Staff, Valery Gerasiv. Furthermore, he added that this rocket was in the sky more than 15 hours. Imagine yourself, a rocket with nuclear engine can, let's say, fly along, let's say, the Atlantic Ocean, something like here for, let's say, dozens of hours, and having on its board probably one of the most powerful warheads we can even imagine. So this missile can fly here, and anytime this missile Burevestnik can attack any territory, let's say in the territory of the Western Europe or even further to the west. So this is obviously one of the most powerful weapons that Russia has in the world. Nobody has something similar, and this can be also a turning point in the relations between Russia and the Western countries. Anyway, this weapon is something like a guarantee for the Russian Federation that they will be able to finish the special military operation on their terms. Anyway, let's wait and see what is going to be next, but obviously the situation is getting very, very critical and very, very interesting. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching, subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.